Hey guys, welcome to another video of mine. Today we are sitting down again and I will be going over the books that I read so far in Q1 of this year. So if you follow my Goodreads and my Fable and maybe my story graph, you guys know that I am not a very fast reader. I usually read around a book every 3 weeks to 4 weeks, and that's if I consistently read, which I don't really do because I don't have as much time as I would like, and I do have other hobbies that I want to focus on. So I think the 4 books that I've completed within the last 3 months is pretty good for me. So without further ado, let us get into the video. So the first book I finished this year was Emily Wilde's Encyclopaedia of Fairies. I technically stopped reading this, I think, at the beginning of 2022. So as I was picking it back up again, I was thinking, how come I don't remember too much about the plot and what happened? Well, that's because it's been 2 years since I last read it. But this book, I thought that it was a very semi-cozy mystery. I think the characters were very lovable. I think the mythology and the fairies were really cool to read about and to learn more about, since I'm not really familiar with this style of mythology. And the book definitely is a lot more character-driven, I think, than plot-driven. You do get a bit of plot to keep the story rolling, but most of the time you're in the perspective of our main character, Emily, and just how she navigates being in a different country and conducting her research and what challenges come in along the way. And I think Emily as the main character was really nice to see. She was very motivated and always independent, wanting to do everything by herself, and she was very capable, and she never wanted to bother anyone or burden anyone with her own concerns and things she wanted to accomplish. So seeing her learn to lean on others and ask for help whenever she needed it was really nice to see. So Emily as the main character, I think, was very suitable for the story and the curiosities of the plotline and the things that they discover within the story. Now moving on to Wendell Bamblebee. I love saying his name. It's such a fancy and a name that's a mouthful to kind of say, but he was a very comical, funny character. I think whenever he was in the scene, it was very lighthearted and very comforting. He is very different from Emily. He's kind of someone who's more laid back and go with the flow type, but I thought that he added an aspect to the dynamic that we really needed. I also think that Emily and Wendell's relationship was very nice to read about. I'm not like a big romance reader or anything, and I love that their relationship and their love really grew throughout the story, and I think that we should all strive to have a love like that, because with Wendell, he lifts Emily up and he likes her for who she is. I know that's like the bare minimum, but I feel like she can really be comfortable and be herself in front of him, which I really love, and I hope that we all can find a love like that if we haven't found it yet. And on to the second book that I finished. This was Taiwan Travelogue. This one I actually read for January for the Subtle Asian Book Club. This is the first book club I have ever joined and have kind of frequently stuck to the actual schedule. So Taiwan Travelogue, it is a sapphic story about food essentially. And after I had learned that they were going to read this book and I looked it up, read the plot for myself, I really wondered how I had never come across this book before, because it's so up my alley and so similar to what I like to read. So a book for foodies, I would say, people who love food, love the cooking process, think that food is an enjoyable experience that you should share with the people you love, and I am one of those people, obviously, as I've mentioned before in my other videos. So that was really nice to read about and also see the perspective that others feel towards food. So like I said, the descriptions of the food, the cooking processes, they really get into it down to the ingredients that are used, the way you cook things and prepare things and dish up and present things. I think that food is a big part of culture, and through this you really learn a lot about Taiwanese culture and Taiwanese food dishes. So because the descriptions are very lengthy and very in-depth, you do find yourself salivating a lot and wanting to seek out this cuisine for yourself. And I'm really sad that there's no Taiwanese food around me so I can seek out these dishes and try them for myself. And our two main characters are named Chizuko and Chizuru. Chizuko is a Japanese writer who is asked to come to Taiwan to write a little travelogue and spread the appeals of Taiwan and try to boost their tourism, while Chizuru is a Taiwanese woman who kind of acts as Chizuko's guide and her interpreter. I love that the two of them had this very close relationship and they matched each other's energy when it came to the food that they ate and how much of a glutton they both can be. And the two of them are very well versed in food as well. They don't really favor any culture's food over another, and they're not picky, so that was nice to see them bond over different cuisines, whether it was Asian food or Western food. The story is also historical fiction, so it takes place during a time where Taiwan is still a colony of Japan. You see how Taiwan and the Taiwanese people were changed by this occupation and how Japan played an influence and a role in that. And the way that Taiwan as a country was described, from the busy city side and the lush countryside, despite how hot it is, and I'm not a big fan of hot weather, I do think that that made me feel like I want to bump it up my travel list and eventually visit the country. The relationship between our two main characters is very complex, I would say, as Chizu is Taiwanese and Chizuko is Japanese, and although one of them feels like they're helping the other by doing these things, the person that they think they're helping feels lesser than. It feels like they're being muted in their identity. So in one way, it is conflicting to read these perspectives. Like, if you're on the colonizer side, you think that you're helping and you're doing something good and being a savior, but from the side that's being colonized, you just feel so little and so small and lesser than those around you. And after finishing the main story, you do get a bunch of afterwards, and there was one that made me bawl so much. I still think about it. I don't think I really cried that much in this book up until that point. After I read that, I was straight up bawling. It's just a very comforting, heartwarming, but still very bittersweet story, because there are very nice and warm moments, but you can't help thinking about the what ifs and what could have been. So I do definitely recommend this book if you like food, if you like sapphic romances, if you love beautiful descriptions of settings, and especially real life setting. I think that this is the book for you, and I think this is so far my favorite read of the year. And now we're on to another book that I started I think last year and I just finished this year, and that is Cascade Failure. A lot of people describe this book as very Firefly-esque, and if you're a millennial, you know about Firefly. I personally have not watched it as of yet, but it is a cult classic, and I do see the similarities just from a surface level standpoint. This book, you guys know that I love to read sci-fi, so I thought that the sci-fi elements in the world building was very interesting. I love the characters and the found family and how they really relied on each other and felt a closeness with each other that they don't feel anywhere else. I also think the dialogue felt very realistic when our main characters were talking to each other. You really felt that closeness that you would feel if you were to imagine like you talking to a close friend. It really felt that real. Though I will say one of my criticisms of this book is that it is very wordy, to the point where you're in a scene, you're in a moment, and suddenly there's a little tangent that kind of takes you out of it and kind of makes you feel like you need to take a break. So our main characters are part of this little ship called the Ambits. We got Jal, who is a deserter of the guild, and he's also an ex-comrade of one of our characters. I think Jal is a very selfless and kind type of character. He's been through so much, he's suffered a lot from the people around him and the situations that he's been in, but he really doesn't let that define him. Like, he's not very harsh on other people, he isn't cynical towards the world, I don't think, at least. But I think as a result of what he's experienced, I think he's very critical of himself and he looks down on himself, even though I think that he's someone who deserves all the love in the world. And, you know, there's just so much in his life that I feel like he deserves to experience. He's definitely someone that you want to root for. I think his point of view was my favorite to read. I love hearing his thought process, and, you know, I just love him. I love a big softie. And then we got Saint, who is also an ex-soldier who knows Jal from back in the day. He kind of gives tough love, and he can be not too straightforward with his emotions and how he says things, but he's someone you can really trust, someone who you believe can really back you up and be there for you when you really need it. So I think you could describe him as a tsundere if we're using those terms. And another crew member is Nash. She is so multi-talented. She is the crew's engineer. She is the crew's medic. I think she keeps everyone grounded. She isn't afraid to tell you how it is. And I also love the way that she speaks and how badass she is. I just love her. Lastly, we got our AI captain, Owen. Owen, even as an AI, they really felt these strong emotions, saw the crew as their own family, and was very afraid of losing their crew and their family. So having them as the captain, I think that you need a captain who is willing to make these sacrifices and play a role that really keeps people together and bands them together. It's always cool having an AI that guides you through things, especially if your captain is an AI. They can really get into the systems, and seeing Owen hack all these things and analyze all the machinery that they came across was really cool to see. So all in all, I think that the world building was really cool to see with the guild and the trust and all that good stuff. My main gripe is still that it was so wordy. I think without all the extra stuff, I would have enjoyed it more. So yeah, it wasn't as immersive as I would have liked because of the wordiness, but overall, I don't think it was too bad of a book. And now we have our last book, which is Everything We Never Had. This is another Subtle Asian Book Club pick, and this was for February. In the story, you follow 4 generations of Filipino men, and you really see how their experiences shaped them in the time they grew up in, and how those experiences affected the generations that came after them. Each of them really had a struggle that was relevant to their time, with Francisco being in the movement of Filipino farm workers coming to America and having to work in the fields in Central California. You got Emilio, who is a direct descendant of Francisco, and how he struggles with having an absent father who's trying to unionize everyone. Then you got Chris, who tries to be a good father even though his own father was very critical and very emotionally absent from his life. And lastly, you got Enzo, who is the youngest, and I think Enzo lives a very privileged life. He goes to a Montessori school. His parents and him hang out together, have like movie nights and game nights, and he's able to talk about emotions to his parents, which I feel like isn't a very common thing in Asian culture. So this is another historical fiction book. I think that I really got to learn more about how Filipinos got their start in America, and I live in Central California, so having a story and perspective that was so close to where I live was really interesting to read about and to really dive into and learn more about. Out of all the characters, I think I really related to Chris the most, even though he was born in the 80s, grew up in the 80s, but I think the way that he and his father Emilio interacted, how Emilio always tried to steer him into this academic path, saying you should quit football, you should focus on your studies, even though Chris wanted to be more creative and hone his creative skills and interests. And when reading Chris's story, I really felt like that hit home. Every time Chris would bring up something to his dad, whether it was a good test score or that he made the football team or something, his dad would be like, okay, you should focus on your studies. Okay, that's what you should be doing. You shouldn't fail. So getting a good score on the test is normal. And as someone who also kind of struggled with having a career in creative stuff, with my parents disapproving of a more artistic and humanities career, I do relate to that a lot. And also I think not being able to speak about emotions to my parents, really. As I said, it's not very common in Asian cultures to confide in your parents when it comes to how you're feeling and how certain situations made you feel emotionally. That's not something that I really grew up knowing how to navigate. So seeing that echoed in the story felt very real, and I felt very validated, I think. And despite the difficulties with their whole family generation, I think that Chris and Enzo have a very good relationship. Chris, as a dad, is willing to hear out Enzo. He defends Enzo from Emilio when Emilio calls Enzo weak because he cries easily and he is able to navigate his emotions healthily. So I think Chris stepping up and being like, Enzo's emotionally forward mindset is very healthy and is a strength of his and not really a weakness. And Chris and Enzo choosing to end generational traumas and patterns, I really appreciated that. It did take 3 to 4 generations, but I think that it's better late than never, and being the one to take that first step is hard, but it is worth it, I think. So I think the growth in the characters, at least in the most recent 2 generations, was really nice to see. Enzo is kind of navigating life during COVID-19, not being able to see his friends and go to school normally, and having to live with his grandfather, Emilio, who he's not very close to. And he's also navigating the intense relationship between his grandfather and his father, and, you know, trying to get them to make amends. So I think, needless to say, although I do get it, I think that Emilio still kind of irritates me. I know it's very realistic and he's like meant to be that way, but I just cannot accept people who refuse to connect with their culture and kind of shun out that part of their identity. And the author really did his research, and I felt like reading each character's point of view, that I was transported back to that time and I was actually seeing them go through all this stuff. The writing's very poetic. I love reading it. I love how every sentence was very emotionally packed and can really hit you at times. And also because I don't read a lot of contemporary setting books, seeing something take place during COVID-19 and seeing Enzo talk about playing Stardew Valley and stuff, I was just like, this is a little new for me. I'm glad I'm branching out and reading books that take place in those settings. And those are all the books I read from January to March of this year. Like I said, it is a lot more than I usually read, so I'm glad that we are able to sit down, break up the little book wrap up, and just talk about it more. Because my end of year wrap ups can get up to like 30 minutes long. And if there are any books that you read so far this year that you would like to mention or recommend me, I would love to hear it. I'm trying to branch out and read more genres and stories, so I'm always open to reading what you guys like to read. So I will see you guys next time. Happy reading and take care. Bye.